All right. So this introduction was not written by me. This was supposed to be given by Mandy Pennington because she knows Connor a lot better than I can see you bracing for impact.
Sounds good.
Connor's used to being on the stage, as you'll soon learn. Conor Kelly O'Brien is the co-founder and current executive director of the Scranton Fringe Festival. As a writer and actor, Conor has performed or had his work performed on stages across North America and the United Kingdom. His credits include Off-Broadway with the Actors Company Theatre, The Cell, and did I say that correctly? The Cell and 59E59 theaters. Good. When he is not performing on stage, in film, or on television, Conor serves as a creative consultant and arts administrator in several organizations locally. He is an asset to both the arts community and our community at large. Tonight, Conor will be discussing where art and technology meet and how new tech has allowed for both better audiences and audience experiences. Please welcome Conor.
Thank you. That's quite a nice little intro. Thank you, Andy. You're my late. Yes, as I stated, my name is Conor Kelly O'Brien. I'm an actor, writer, social media by necessity, and that has also led me into the life of being an arts producer. Like many of you in this room, whether or not you're in my field specifically, I'm sure you can all relate to the ethos that if the work is not existing that you want to be conducting or doing, that you often have to create it for yourself. And that was how I was kind of raised in the theatrical and even television world, and has thankfully led me to projects that pay that I didn't have to create as well. The title of my presentation today, Creating Dialogue on Stage and Online, New Media and Performing Arts, it's a very loose framework. I designed this is actually the first time I'm presenting this presentation specifically, so it's kind of a test run to be totally fair with you. I have talked about this numerous times, and I'm more than happy to go into any detail. I'm telling you right now, if I skim over anything or say something casually that requires further explanation or you just want more information, we're all grown adults, just shout out and we'll discuss it from there. Sound good? Cool. Okay, so prologue. What will we be discussing today? This presentation will discuss the following: fringe festivals, aka why I care about this topic. I do work in theater, professional, non-professional, for-profit, non-profit. That doesn't happen around fringe festivals, but for the last few years that has kind of been a focal point of my administrative career, so I thought it made the most sense to structure this around that way. If I say fringe festivals, you could also synonymously substitute that with anything in the performing arts: concert, theater, film, stand-up comedy, video game, augmented reality, interactive projects, shows, or demonstrations. So just kind of keep that in mind. Ways in which I and others are using new media and tech in the theater. I'll be talking mostly about social media and implemented technology in production. But if there's another topic or an idea that comes to you, please feel free to shout it out. And what more can we be doing? That's more of a structured, open dialogue. Let's dive in. Okay, Act 1. What the hell is a fringe festival? Show of hands, who here has ever heard of, whether it's the Edinburgh, Scranton, or one of 200 worldwide, who here has heard of the fringe festival movement at all? Okay, that's totally okay. I'm going to pass these around. These are not required reading material, but I wanted you guys to have a copy to take home with you. So, very generally speaking, fringe festivals are focused on the performing arts, uncensored, they are festivals, original, rapid fire. When I say that this is very generally speaking, this is very generally speaking. Fringe festivals around the world are all independent. There's about over 200 in the world. None of them, with a few limited exceptions, are really connected other than in spirit, name, and professional cooperation. We all operate independently of each other. I'm going to talk about a little bit of the history of where they came from, how they began, and why I think at their core they're such a really great metaphor and jumping off point for new media and for everything you guys do. So this one usually is what trips people up, uncensored. It doesn't mean that fringe festivals are universally provocative or raunchy. They can be. They also can be squeaky clean and family friendly. They just don't place censorship, and I'll explain why in a minute based on its history. By festivals, I mean they are typically multi-day, multi-venue, consecutively happening. They range from a one weekend to ours in Scranton, which is coming up at the end of this month, and I'll talk about more in a minute, has grown to 9 days long. Some are over a month, and it depends where in the world you are. They are typically original, and by that they are new works or original creative works. They can also just as easily feature works by Shakespeare, Chekhov, any established writer from time immemorial until now. They just happen to have a lot of original content because it's usually a safe place for original content to be produced, and they are rapid fire. They can have up to 50 productions, 10 productions, over 3,000 productions in a single festival. So usually tech has to move very quickly. And for tech to move very quickly, it has to be well managed, well executed, and be the best that it can be while still probably operating on a small budget. So that's what a fringe is, but it doesn't explain where it came from. So the first fringe festival in the world wasn't really planned, it just kind of happened. I'm going to take you guys a quick little history lesson. In 1947, Edinburgh, Scotland, which is Scotland, north of England, in the United Kingdom, they wanted to reunite Europe and specifically the United Kingdom after the devastation of World War II. Edinburgh, Scotland was selected because one, it's an absolutely beautiful, gorgeous city. It had a long, rich academic history, so a lot of colleges, universities, theatrical troops, but also because it was mostly untouched by the bombings that had occurred in World War II in the rest of the United Kingdom. It's quite all right. So, in 1947, they held the first International Festival of Music and Drama. They held the first International Festival of Music and Drama in Edinburgh, Scotland, curated by a single committee and an artistic director. There were companies from Paris, Prague, Milan, Venice, predominantly Europe, but even extending into parts of Asia and the African continent. 8 companies, 6 from Scotland, 2 from England, who were not invited and were not accepted, but even though they tried to be part of the festival, took the initiative and said, well, screw it, there's going to be tons of people in the city. The hotels are going to be packed. We know where the shows are going to be taking place. We know where they're going to be lining or queuing up to get their tickets and go to the theaters. Why don't we just do our own thing? There is no reason to believe those 8 companies ever communicated with each other. There is no reason to believe they ever made a plan. They all just kind of had that sense of entrepreneurship and ingenuity and did it on their own. At the time, it kind of became informally known as the Adjunct Festival. These artists found their own venues, did their own promotion, did everything they possibly could on their own. They simply capitalized on the influx of tourism and media that had descended upon the city of Edinburgh, even for its time in 1947. 1 year later, it happened again, and a journalist and playwright by the name of Robert Kemp in a paper coined the term fringe theater. In Europe and the United Kingdom, depending on how it translates, what they would call fringe theater is what we would here call in New York off-Broadway, off-Broadway, or independent theater. I believe his quote was specifically, there's a lot of independent enterprise happening around the fringe of the main festival. So it kind of became synonymous with, at the time, the physical location, as this smaller sister festival was very tiny compared to the big international, but it also had something to do with the content. The work wasn't necessarily prim and polished. The work wasn't necessarily classic or traditional. It could have been incredibly avant-garde, very modern, or whatever it needed to be. So, that was Edinburgh, Scotland in 1947 when 8 companies just did their own thing. It grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. Somewhere in the mid-1950s, the Edinburgh Fringe Society, as an official charitable organization, was formed. They would at no time would curate, promote, or program content. They were simply a hub to provide support, communication, recommend services, and they would publish a master program. They were just a marketing launching pad, you could almost say, and provided services. So, the festival does continue today, but what's happened to it? So, it has grown. As of 2010, it is the largest arts event in the recorded history of mankind. In 2017, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival sold nearly 2.7 million tickets, spanning over 53,000 performances of 3,398 shows. It encompasses pretty much the entire month of August. I just came back from my second year attending only about 12 days of the festival. I attended on behalf of Scranton Fringe and as an artist to produce work at a later date. And it absolutely is the most incredible thing you could ever experience. What you are seeing here is one fraction of the Royal Mile, which is the main strip of the city. The city's population is typically around 400,000, I believe. During the month of August, it triples. And what you are seeing is tons of artists promoting their banners, flyers, doing street performances, pop-ups. It's really incredible to see not only of the traditional marketing new media has done now at Edinburgh, but this year specifically what I was seeing in digital marketing and new tech media and how they were adapting, both from a budgetary standpoint, an environmental sustainable standpoint, and just in general. So, I just wanted to give you kind of a taste of what this has become. It is the largest arts event, again, not in the world ever, in the recorded history of mankind. Now let's get local, right? A little smaller. The Scranton Fringe Festival was co-founded by myself and Elizabeth Bowen in 2014. The first festival happened in 2015, so we're gearing up for our fourth. Last year in 2017, we held our third, and we had somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 in attendance. That was across 5 days in downtown Scranton. As I mentioned earlier, we have now grown to 9 days, September 22nd through the 30th. You have the complete lineup in front of you. We have had artists from across the globe. I think we've had about 26 US states represented so far. We're hoping to hit all 50 within a few years. They come primarily, it's not a huge moneymaker, but they come to gain fans, test out new material, and tour the US Fringe circuit. We are strategically placed right after two larger Fringe festivals, just maybe they're more established, the Philadelphia and the Rochester, and we are now right before the New York International, which has recently moved itself to the fall. Does anyone have any questions on anything I just rattled off so far? Just want to make sure you have a clear understanding. Yeah?
Why do I know Robert Kemp's name? That's really starting to annoy me.
I don't know. He was a Scottish journalist and playwright. He would have coined that term in 1948. I think he died in the 70s. I cannot tell you he was more known as a journalist than a playwright, so maybe he wrote an essay or something you're familiar with?
I don't know.
Okay.
The name's sticking with me. I know that.
Okay. I do not know.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Perfectly fair question. Okay.
So, actually,
Yeah.
and maybe you're going to address this, so I don't want to steal your thunder, but do you see, I'm going to say Hollywood in the most generic sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, this seems like a good place to try out new material, new shows, new ideas, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you see a lot in these types of venues?
When you say, I understood you for the second part. I don't know what the Hollywood connotation came into play.
Well, if I wanted to try a new show, I'm not going to spend a ton of money on a network if I.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yes. Fringe festivals are a really great jumping off point. We're still developing as an industry hub. With that being, when I say industry hub, I mean there's a lot of fringe festivals in the world, even in the United States, where there's tons of media. That typically happens in the larger cities. Orlando, I would say, is probably the biggest fringe in the United States. Orlando, Rochester, New York, Philadelphia, New York, San Diego is an international as well. San Diego is actually the only fringe festival in the world that boasts that it actually happens in 2 countries simultaneously, because right across the border in Tijuana, it has venues as well. But yes, it's a really good place to test out new material. And I'll even tell you, even on a smaller scale locally, we've had shows that have played the Fringe. The way that it works for most festivals, ours is a little different, but it's fundamentally the same principle. We curate our festival. We primarily curate for time and space. We do not place restriction on artistic content. It's more about logistics. And then because we manage all of our venues, a lot of other fringes, like in Edinburgh, you, as I mentioned before, you are responsible for everything. You find your venue, you lock down your venue contract, you hire your technician, you do all your marketing, and then you pay a fee to the Edinburgh Fringe Society to get in a booklet on a digital website for your ticketing. That's like that thing. It is valuable and it's a worthwhile. They do provide other services and resources, but it's a very costly endeavor. So what we do is we charge very modest production fees. It's based upon the size of your venue, small, medium, large, or a custom fee for site-specific work. You want to do your show in the lobby of a hotel and they've given you permission, great, we can help you with that. We then give back over 70% of gross ticket sales after we have provided tech, technicians, box office, marketing support. They are responsible for promoting their own show. We kind of promote the overall festival and give them a platform. But even on that small scale, what you are seeing is, this is a perfect example. This is a venue inside the lower levels of the Scranton Cultural Center. We produce about 3 spaces in there every year. A really big one, this is kind of the medium one, and a slightly smaller one on the 3rd floor. This normally, just the venue rental alone would have cost you probably more than the production fee they paid us. So because we do everything in group and as a nonprofit, we negotiate for almost a year at a time, we're able to provide all of this at incredibly subsidized rates. The tech, everything you see in that venue, the pipe and drape, the lighting, the sound, the chairs, the platforms, we provide whether ourselves or through partnership with the venue. So not only is it really cost effective, it's less of a risk on the artist's end, it allows them to take risks. We also in turn are able to make it more affordable and accessible for audience members. Our tickets range, some events free, some events $5, typically they range between 8 and 12. And I'd be happy to, that's not really what I'm here to talk about, but I'd be happy to explain that in more detail. But for example, there are shows that have been in the Scranton Fringe Festival that larger, even regional institutions like the Cultural Center, the FM Kirby Center, the Theater at North, I know have come and have seen, and whether or not it's that particular piece, I know it has gone on to produce larger work or it has gained employment in your interest. I've also seen graphic designers use this as leverage for future work. They did some graphic design work for some of the shows in the festival. Again, the shows deal directly with their own vendors. They did it, I'm sure, for a very, very small stipend, but because the work was so rapidly exposed to such a wide audience during the festival, I know that it got them the attention of future creative projects that no doubt had much larger budgets. I am not ever trying to say you should work for free. I'm just saying that a Fringe Festival is kind of a great equalizer. And if you whatever you put into it, if you work hard enough, you will get back. Okay, that was a long-winded way to get back around to what Fringe means to me and tech, and why I'm using that as a jumping-off point for this discussion. So Fringe Festivals are, again, to summarize and maybe touch on a few new points, annual events that require a great deal of planning, communication, and low-budget solutions. This is a lot where the new tech and software programs that we use comes into play. They are events that bring in thousands for much, much bigger communities like Edinburgh, Scotland, if not millions, of people together to learn, be entertained, and discuss. Fringe, like much new digital media, is a platform for those who aren't often heard. The reason that I'm so passionate about really bridging our community with the tech community is because they already overlap in so many ways, whether it's production, graphic design, whether it's just you yourself or also an artist or a lover of the arts. And I think that we are two often underheard communities in this area that depend upon each other, and I think that unifying them would bring about a much stronger scene in general. So, moving on. New media and tech being used in the theater. Okay, so there's three different ways I think we can kind of talk about this, and again, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm going to give my few points and thoughts, and then I'd love to have it be a group discussion. Marketing and promotion, this is talking to them before the show, the event, the project, whatever we're working on or insert there. Audience development, this is a major term in a lot of nonprofits, especially in cultural, performing arts, visual arts, literary arts organizations. Audience development is simply a fancy way of saying it's talking to them after the show. Yay, you sold out your crowd, you got them there. You do another show in 3 months and no one shows up. It's because this might have been great for that first show, but something failed in between. Are they enjoying it? Is this the work they want to be seen? Are you really reaching the right audience? Just because you filled the seats, is that necessarily the best for you? Audience development is also ensuring that you're representing a wider range. When I was in Edinburgh, Scotland, a major discussion was both on racial, ethnic diversity, but also accessibility. We use that term a lot, and I usually think about it in terms of, making sure that it's wheelchair accessible and that it's affordable. And the term is really so much wider. Do you have a hard of hearing or deaf population? There's some incredible new simultaneous translation technology available that I think is absolutely brilliant. That it's not just something typical. Has anyone ever seen a theatrical performance where they did simultaneous translations, whether it was for a language barrier or because someone couldn't hear? So typically, in what's been done is they're performing way above you is like this big digital screen with text scrolling across it. That's great, and that's a step, and that's still phenomenal. But when you think about how you enjoy a performance and you're watching the actor's face and you're watching or a musician perform or someone recite something, you want to be focusing on them, not looking up here and then checking, what's happening down here, looking up here, what's happening down here. They're creating these incredible movable technologies that allow the dialogue to be occurring directly above the actor. A lot of that's through digital projection, 3D projection. It's some really phenomenal stuff. Beyond my understanding, but I got to see when I was over in Scotland. It blew my mind. And that kind of goes back to medium delivery. Literally, how are they watching it? There's a major discussion right now in theater communities worldwide of, is streaming technology our friend or our enemy? How do we balance that? Because at the end of the day, we don't want to undersell or minimize the experience of being in a room together live. But if there's people that live in areas that literally cannot get to you, are you doing your work? Mind you, I'm going to be speaking a lot, and I come from a very nonprofit, cultural, public good mindset where art, I believe, is a necessity for the public and it should be delivered to them as much as possible. There is, of course, also the capitalistic end of things, which is, the bottom line has to clear in the black and we have to make money. So marketing promotion, talking to them before, audience development, talking to them afterward, medium delivery, how are you talking to them? So these are some just programs that for any of you, is anyone in here interested or out of their work has to be involved in some form of event planning of any kind? Okay, a few. And even if you think you're not, keep in mind, does your company hold launch events? Are you trying to work with the press? Are you going to be tracking, whether I call them patrons and donors, you might call them investors or potential clients? A few software programs I use that I highly recommend, and by the way, I will email this to you and Mandy at the conclusion of this, so don't stress about having to remember all this. Artful.ly is for tracking audience members, donors, and patrons. It's something that I'm still trying to get better with using. What's really phenomenal about it is that it's so user-friendly. I create a profile. It's like creating like an internal profile system for anyone that our organization reaches. It also allows me to track communications. When was this donor last contacted? How were they contacted? Was it by phone, email, Facebook Messenger, in person? Who did it? And it creates this beautiful web network that makes my life so much easier. Gotta get better with using it, but it is phenomenal. For our purposes, this is not what I recommend in the grand scale of things. If you're planning a festival with tens and tens of hundreds of thousands of attendees, we are at the point right now where our needs and our budget are best met by Eventbrite. The challenge with us is that because we are a multi-venue, multi-day festival, meaning that as you'll see in your programs, show X, Y, and Z always plays at the same venue, but it doesn't necessarily play at the same time every day. Like Friday at 8, Saturday at 3, and Sunday at 6. And we have to find a program that facilitates all of that. We've been working with Posture Interactive locally, who did most of our graphic design and has been assisting with our web development, as well as a web developer who's actually based in Australia. And they've been able to work the back end of Eventbrite into our website really phenomenally. And last but not least, this is huge, and it sounds so simple, but for us, the visual form builder application of WordPress. This we use across the board. It creates consistency. When you apply as an artist, you're coming in that form, it automatically populates a spreadsheet. When you are accepted into the festival, it tracks if your contract's been accepted. Once you are in the festival, we also make artists fill out another form, because by the time between applications, acceptance, and ready to go print in the guide, your show might have changed, especially if it's original or new material. Maybe your description's kind of changed. Maybe you've decided, oh, it's not really PG-13, it's more R. And again, as I went back to that earlier point, we don't believe in censorship, but we also believe in transparent communication to our audiences. And because it's so much, we don't read the scripts, we only ask for brief synopsis, maybe a few pages, maybe a video clip. It's kind of hard for us to monitor that. It's the #1 tool that's allowed us, besides Posture's wonderful skills, that's allowed us to create this guide when you're pulling content from, in our case, literally 75 to 100 sources or vendors between sponsors, advertisers, venues, and artists. So a major topic that I wanted to discuss was in the theatrical arts and the performing arts, or in any business model you guys might be experiencing, especially in this area, there's a major duality of populations. You have more mature age citizens, or those that don't really embrace the media, and then you have people like yourselves, very progressively minded when it comes to new tech and technology. We don't want to ostracize either, so how do we bridge the two gaps? I'm going to give you 3 little tips that have been working really well for us, and we're still growing them. So I'm very much adamant about environmental sustainability as best we can. The guides you see in your hand, for example, we have to print them. It's the best tool that we have. We do print about 11,000 copies and distribute them across the Northeast in general. When I say Northeast, I don't mean the state, I mean the entire Northeast. But the paper that they are printed on is completely recyclable and printed at a wind-generated factory. So we try to, rob Peter, pay Paul when we can. So older audiences, we have found they are okay with adapting to digital newsletter and outreach. It's really not that bad. Where the disconnect happens, and I've noticed the trend that some people are like, oh no, you have to say paper for them, and you have to go digital for this. There is something to be said about that. There's always going to be a marginal group, but it's just the frequency in which they need that. The average user may only need an email once before them a newsletter, once, especially if you're really getting to them directly, whether through social media or emails. For an older demographic, it has to be a minimum 3 times with the exact same content. I know there's often discussion of, no, you should alter your content every time so it looks a little new when you're trying to reach a demographic that's, and again, I don't mean to say older, like, I'm not trying to be ageist, people that are older, 10 times older than me, that are way better technology. But when you're talking about a population that just isn't tech savvy, maybe I should have worded it that way. When you're working with a population that's not tech savvy, they need the content repeated again and again and again. We found that at every stage, whether it's artists that we're dealing with, audience members, or the general public. This is a major topic that we're constantly having discussion about, streaming content. Our objective will always be getting people out to experience the magic that is a live experience in a room. Is there any limited content that we can curate for live streaming? The challenge here is balancing outreach. We want to reach a wider audience with artists' bottom lines. So not coming and attending the show, and if we're stating the narrative that you can just get it for free, then we're not paying our artists, which is part of our mission. Make introductions. Common complaints that many people's social media doesn't have to feel distant. When I say use it to make direct connections, I have personally taken it upon myself, and again, I have the luxury of being invested in living in this area most of the year, or at least part of the year. If I know of people that are coming to the festival, there's thousands, but if I know of a small population that I know are coming and doing it alone, they may be new to the area, they're traveling in, they don't have that friend or group that goes to shows together, I will literally start tagging them together in a group and making them experience this together. We've also used this to connect specific customers to sponsors or potential sponsors to demonstrate to them our ability to deliver viable consumers based upon the demographics they're trying to reach. XYZ company is trying to reach women ages 35 to 64. Great, we're going to tag you with this women's group that we know is coming to several shows, and we're going to tell them that you should come meet up with them and buy them coffee when they're at the Fringe. It's the Fringe festivals, and again, I keep using that term. You could break it down and just say theater, concert, event. The more that you show them even the tiniest bit of forethought, the more it feels like an experience. And at the end of the day, it's everything we're trying to create. So what has social media shown us for audience development, jumping into that second point? It has shown us literally where audiences are going, virtually and real life. What restaurants or bars are they going to after shows? What other theaters and venues do they patronize? That's a huge one. I worked with a theater company in New York for their social media, and without going into names, there was always these 3 top other nonprofit competitors in the nonprofit off-Broadway community that they were like, no, we want to follow them, follow them. And our social medias were about the same. We did reach similar audiences. They were doing kind of similar work. But then once we did some research and we started looking at, well, what other pages, sort of American traditional late 19th, early 20th century works, and in reality they were all following the more modern, hip, edgy, let's say, content. And it told us that they are lovers of classical theater, but they are hungry and willing to take risks. That actually influenced like $500,000 worth of programming 2 years later. That they completely changed the scope of their marketing and programming, and I think that company is on their way to winning a Tony in the next 3 years. Because it truly, at least as a production company, because it really upped their dialogue. Again, what pages are they following or what are they not following was interesting for us to know. What our audiences want kind of goes back to that, but also it gives them a really quick and easy platform for reviews, feedback, discussion among themselves. We've also found that if you're looking to get legitimate media coverage, whether it's a local level, state, national, international, it doesn't matter if you want Scranton Times or Huffington Post, we've been finding that Facebook reviews, Twitter reviews, encouraging your audience, whether they love it or hate it, you can always choose to what one you want to feature or you want to retweet, but we have found that that's really been driving attention. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what company, what brand, what product, what service you're selling or offering for free even. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to get as many engaged individuals as possible. I'm no different than customer XYZ 1,000 miles away. Maybe they just have more money. That's the only difference. And maybe they're part of a collective that's bigger. That's the only difference in the grand scheme of things. And last but not least, who the audience is. That data is vital for developing new sponsors, especially in the nonprofit world. We're finding more and more that nonprofits that can provide clear cut, not just, oh, we have 10,000 followers on Twitter. Who are they? What do they like? What do they not like? How old are they? Where are they living? The demographic data that social media can provide, even cursory, even before you really dive in and start getting deep with analytics, it really is incredible. That also connects back to everything else I was saying, which was, we know that our 50% of our audiences are going to, the bar down the street after 4 shows. That's probably a culture and environment we should be going to physically look at and determine what is about this place that they like. Did they come here first, or did they come here because we were here? Is this a place we can create a partnership with? It's things that sound so silly and so simple, but it's often those things that we overlook. The best things in life are free, except theater. So in 2016, the average ticket price for a single ticket to a USA-based nonprofit theater was about $38. Let's round it down to $38. That's obviously much higher at the price point than our Fringe Festival, because we keep ticket prices low as part of our mission. In this area, you will see small community theater groups charging $10. I work with a couple companies that are a little more mid-level. You'll see them charging 15 to 20. And obviously, when you have like bigger shows, the Cultural Center, Broadway, touring shows, those tickets are 38 would be a steal. I've seen those go to 50, 60, 75, 80. And with justifiable reason. The reason I wanted to provide that statistic was because I wanted to demonstrate this is truly the number we're fighting. Whether or not my company or any company you may work for, or any project you're working for, even if you're not selling at the average market rate for the country, and obviously I'm sure that's proportional by immediate income, community, I'm sure we're probably a little lower than that, but that is the number you're fighting. Whether or not you charge that number, that is what it's costing you. On the back end of things, you might be subsidizing that with in-kind support, volunteers, blood, sweat, and tears, or being creative, but at the end of the day, that number, whether it's through actual cash, in kind, or just really asking a lot of favors, is ultimately your bottom line number is always the number you're going to be fighting, whether you realize it or not. I just wanted to mention that for the sake of argument. Okay, this is the part where you should talk. So I just rambled off a lot of facts and figures and a little bit of insight into what I do and where I think tech, marketing, and theatrical arts can merge. I do want to thank you for your time. The only thing left after this portion, I believe, is my sources and some other resources, which again, I'll send out. I'd like to open up the floor to questions and for any topics of discussion. Again, this is really, this evening of all of us together will only be strongest if we're all talking. So I really want you to think that in the grander scheme of things, you don't have to ask me questions about what specifically I was talking about, but using that as a jumping off point. Is there anything that I said that has sparked an idea, a thought, or even a challenge or a problem that you are facing or you foresee yourself facing in the near future? And whether it's me or someone else in the room might be able to add more to it. Yes, thank you.
What medium of advertising have you found most effective, like Twitter, Facebook, email?
On social media?
Any advertising in general.
Advertising
what
in
forms
general.
of advertising?
I mean, I'll be totally honest with you. If I had to say these printed guides, I know it sounds like I'm going against everything I was just saying, the printed medium. I will actually add to that. The printed version and also the more user-friendly, scrollable, interactive, we made a digital copy of this, which is available online. We are noticing a major trend like that. Last year, about like 50,000 hits on it, the digital copy, whereas the year prior, it wasn't as user-friendly. I think it might have just been download PDF, like you had downloaded, and it took forever to load. It was like half that. So oddly enough, just the combination of the printed and digital material and being able to have them go hand in hand and maybe one promotes the other. Outside of that, I would say probably, see for us it's weird, I know this is the trend that it's shying away from, probably still Facebook. We are finding we're a lot of the traffic from our ticket sales, unless they're coming directly from our website or from boosted advertisements on Google, they're coming from Facebook, for the most part. Yes?
You said that reviews are one of the most impacting things on your events. So what kind of strategy or method do you have in place to really effectively get people to give reviews to your events?
I mean, the simplest way is simply creating a very simple and easy to remember hashtag, just because one allows you to find them quickly and allows them to engage with you back. So when I say reviews, it doesn't even have to be, you could of course have Facebook reviews. It could even just be share your thoughts.
So it sounds like what you kind of do is you have a post with a hashtag on it and you get people to
Every
sort of
printed material,
engage.
those guides, every sign at all of our venues, every in-real event we do, whether it's speaking to them directly, signage, or printed materials that are handed to them.
Okay.
Hashtag Scranton Fringe, what are you seeing? What are you loving? What are you not loving? Just spread the word. Obviously that traction is higher during the actual physical event, but we're finding that to be incredibly hard. We also have the advantage of, because we're like a wide-reaching festival, we have 50-some productions in us. We encourage them to do the same and use this one single hashtag. We also chose very early on, at least for our first 5 years, we've never used any hashtag other than hashtag Scranton Fringe. We never made it by a year, we never made it by event. Just because we're so wide-reaching and we do so much even throughout the year, we determined it was better to have the conversation be as general and wide-reaching as possible. We can always respond to people and we'll know what they're talking about. So I would honestly say that hashtag. Some people have also created, whether it's through Facebook reviews or they've created their own review system. I've seen some nonprofits and cultural events create like basically their own internal 5-star rating. I've also seen this being done very successfully on apps, which hopefully someday we'll get to that point where we can afford that resource. That would be something I think an app would be a little amazing way to review a festival or a show, because then that way you could actually be reviewing the specific show that you want, not just the festival overall. Long-winded answer, Ashley.
That's cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Did anyone else have any other comments, questions? Yes, sir.
In terms of advertising,
Yes.
you've got these different medias. You've got print, you've got Facebook, you've got other. Do you try keeping your ads uniform across the three, or do you experiment with trying?
We do experiment from time to time. A lot of that has to do with we decide that, I shouldn't say I'm making it sound more intelligent. I would argue that has to do with the age demographic that we find that's on the Facebook tends to be a bit of a wider, slightly older reaching demographic. Twitter kind of tends to be my age, like mid-late 20s to early mid-30s, like young professionals. And Instagram, and of course everything has a spectrum, Instagram tends to, and Snapchat tend to rank younger. So when we're doing for paid advertising on those platforms, not just general promotion, we kind of tend to curate the content based upon who it's going to interest. A show that's really marketing itself to 21, 22, 23-year-olds, we're probably going to lean more towards Instagram on that. A show that's our general, I will tell you that typically if we're paying for advertising for us, it's usually for just the festival in general, so it's pretty uniform. For individual shows, we rarely ever do paid promotion because that's their responsibility, not ours.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say pretty uniform, but if there was a distinction, it's based on age.
Okay.
What elements go into sponsorship outreach?
Oh, that's a great question. Can you be more specific? Just so I make sure I know what
I'm looking for just a broad idea. I'm not even sure where to start.
Like, what are we offering sponsors, or what are we asking from them?
For somebody who's looking to do any sort of cold outreach at all, I think.
Gotcha. Yes. So we have a nice merger between our marketing and development committees that help us put those together. I should have brought materials. I thought of that too. We did a lot of research in the area of what are other nonprofits asking or offering for sponsors. For $5,000, you'll get X, Y, A, B, C, X, Y, Z. We also, honest to God, it sounds so silly, we also just talked to our current sponsors and asked them, hey, when you make a donation to us and we give you passes and buttons and advertising, what are you really looking for? I'm finding more and more, especially with the way tax structure is going, that a lot of people are giving primarily what they believe in the cause that you're supporting. And again, whether you're donating or investing, use that term, either they believe in it or they actually are that they're using it as advertising and marketing platform while simultaneously making themselves feel good. The tax write-off for nonprofits for when people donate to us is helpful and important, but it's not even the top 2 reasons people tend to be giving lately. Something we're doing differently this year with our VIP passes, which we offer only to major sponsors, donors, and a very limited amount that we sell publicly, which gets you to anything and everything. For the first time ever, we're doing special codes on the back of each one, and that data will be collected at the doors of all the venues. We've also, through Eventbrite, have created a way you can reserve your tickets for free at no cost. You don't need to enter your credit card info using your code. It's a little complicated, and I think if we got any bigger at this point, I don't think it would sustain itself. But for a festival our size, where we're only dealing with like 100-200 VIP passes, it's not that hard. And that way we're actually going to be able to see what sponsors are going to what shows. So to answer your question on our end, I think the number one asset is going to be knowing what shows and what content they're interested in. I have no idea, so this will be the first year that we'll know what they're looking for. In terms of sponsorship outreach, the number one advice that I would give is don't do a cold ask. We try to avoid that as much as possible. Even if it's something as simple as pick the top 20, 50 companies, contacts you want to reach out to, gather your team and ask them, does anyone know anyone that knows anyone on this list? A coffee introduction, typically with our outreach, it goes through a board or committee member or a volunteer who's working with us that already has a contact. They make the introduction and then we go from there. Sometimes I'm not brought into it until the check's already about to be cut, and it varies so heavily. The number one thing is follow through and consistency. Like, have a system in place, no matter how big or small your project or company is. Like, we have coffee with that donor, I immediately phone my next checklist, which that artfully helps with. Again, it's so bad with it, and I need to get better with it. But has the sponsor or donor as a little reminder since that last meeting they took with us. Even if I bought the coffee, if I sent them a little thank you email or phone call, deciding early on, like anything in business or strategy, just making your plan ahead of time, as silly as it may seem. If someone gives me $100, or you writing them a personal thank you note, Do they get a boilerplate letter? Do they get an email? Do they get a phone call? What is that? Forget about like the perks they get. How are you follow up with that correspondence? And it sounds silly and stupid, but when you're working on something and you're in the moment of it, oh, that person gets $5,000 and that person gets $500. You may say, nope, everyone gets 110% of my full energy and attention, and everyone's getting a beautiful handwritten note and a bouquet of flowers.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm being genuine. Some people are like that, and more power to them. That bouquet of flowers cost you $20. They gave you $100. Probably should have put that money towards something else. I would also just honest to God ask them. I would actually, I've known nonprofits that have done incredibly well. They took a year where they didn't make actual asks. They just talked to potential sponsors and said, hey, we're going to be putting together sponsorship materials for next season or next year. What are things that you're tired of nonprofits offering you? I don't want to sound negative. I have framed questions like that. Like when another nonprofit or community event that you sponsor, has there been anything that you didn't like? And a lot of them said, you know what, we donated some money to X, Y, and Z cause, and they had a program, and we were mentioned in one line, and we thought we kind of deserved more. So that's two things. One, okay, good to know you like being featured in advertising and attention, but also two, they didn't communicate. You didn't know what you were getting. It wasn't that they didn't deliver what they promised, they made no promise, and you had no expectation. So just setting an expectation, I guess, is ultimately the number one thing. Sorry, so long-winded.
No worries.
Setting an expectation.
Thank you.
Welcome. Does anyone else have any other comments, questions, or thoughts on this? Yes?
So I have two questions. One
Sure.
you kind of answered by proxy, but I'll ask anyway.
Sure.
Why not? Have you ever looked at doing anything with Bluetooth beacons, QR codes, near field?
In what respect? For marketing?
For marketing, for tracking users, for, okay, you're at this venue, this is what's playing now.
Not for
you know,
anything,
like
not for actual event planning, logistics, or tracking data. We did use it for, so we're working with them again this year. Last year we worked with a member of our board, is the director of the business leadership program at the University of Scranton. Their students conducted a survey, which was both for audience response, what are you liking, what are you not liking, how was your experience, but it was also a lot about economic impact, what zip code are they coming from, so it showed us how much tourism range we were getting. It also showed us where they're spending their money and how much money we're spending. It allowed us to confirm that minimally last year, just during the 5-day festival, we generated about $200,000 in Lackawanna County alone, let alone the work we do year round. And that wasn't counting hotels, that wasn't counting travel, and that wasn't counting any kind of means of transportation in the city. So to answer your question, yes, we used QR codes for that. That was kind of pushed by the University of Scranton students. That actually is interesting you bring that up. There was a divide between that outreach we do with the University of Scranton students. It's kind of their project, and they kind of took the lead with it, both for their education, but also for we just didn't have time. But also our marketing committee was like, no, we don't like, no one does QR codes. So it was really weird to see. Again, it was kind of an age difference of who was getting that feedback. So to answer your question, yes, we've used QR codes, but only in terms of audience feedback and tracking. We've never used it for anything in the event itself. And I think we have a second question.
If nobody else has any other tech-related questions.
No, please.
All right. Looking at the Scranton area, what do you think is the cultural impetus for, or the level of interest in this kind of performance? Because, you know, I look at the Kirby Center. I was going to the Kirby Center for 20 years. I was there 2 years ago, and it was heartbreaking.
Oh, no. Oh, is the turnout you mean?
No, I mean, to see, you know, 20 years ago when you went in, it was an actual event. It's a glorified theater now. I mean, they've painted it the drabbest, most depressing color of brown. The bar's not open half the time. They removed all the chairs from the lot. I mean, it's, you may as well go to Cinemark.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So, you know, and also you look at Kirby, and you look at Kirby, and you look at the Scranton Cultural Center, and you just look at the caliber of shows they're getting, and the volume, the number of shows they're getting. Kirby, I used to do 10 shows a year. Now, I'm lucky if I see one that even interests me.
Well, yeah, I can't agree or disagree, and I can't speak to those institutions specifically. I can tell you we get a phenomenal response. Our only limitation is financial. I don't think we've ever wanted for. So we went from, in the first year, about 2,000 attendance. The second year, I think we went to about 3.5 thousand. And then last year, we went over 5. So I mean, obviously it's a slow growth, but it's still considerable growth. I'm hoping we hit 8, not believing whatever, this year. There's some things internally I think we're going to change next year. If it occurs again, we always put that disclaimer just because we are a nonprofit, but we can't continue without support. I believe it's there. That's kind of the beauty of Fringe Festivals is that because we're open access, we specifically don't produce that much content. We sort of just open applications and see what we've got. This was the first year we actually rejected almost as many as we accepted, which broke my heart. But it was, again, just for logistics and time and space resources. I actually think the need is there. Not just the need, but I think the demand is there. The challenge is getting people to plan ahead. It's just my biggest frustration is there's a small percentage of people that I deal with that are huge arts lovers that go to things at the Cultural Center and the Kirby all the time, but they have this really bad mentality of like, oh yeah, I cannot wait for it. I can't wait for months. Like this has been out for 2 months, this guy. I can't wait for it. And then the week of the festival, they go, oh, I forgot. We want to go away to Boston for the weekend, so we decided to go this weekend. Well, okay. You're welcome to go. You're welcome to live your life, but this clearly wasn't important enough for you to make that plan. But there's the constant need for, I mean, that's the one thing I will say about new media and technology that I think has made things great, is that we're constantly accessible to so many opportunities, experiences, and offers. It's also made it really hard to lock people down to things. So that I would say financially and just getting people to feel a sense of urgency that events like ours constantly need, because I call it the Walmart mentality. They think it's been there forever, it'll always be there, and that's not true. We easily can evaporate. Even places like the Kirby and the Cultural Center, which have been around for decades, would not take much for them to, I mean, I hope they don't, and I don't think that's gonna happen, but the support is real. Just because you don't donate or go to a show this year, it may not be there next year. I'm not saying it's guilt trip anybody, I'm just saying that there's that. So I think that mentality, because if we this year happen, it'll go great, it'll be fine. If we determine, you know what, 4 years was a good run, it's not working, it's not financially sustainable, we're not getting paid when we need to be paid, which is minor at this point, and we can't grow, we're gonna call it a day, Godspeed. I think there'd be a huge outpouring, oh my God, no! And I think you would see our audience reach quadruple in a minute. But that's not sustainable. That's a famine mentality that we constantly, we need them to be coming even when it's a feast. So yeah, long-winded again, but I think that the cultural, what you call it, litmus? Was that what you said? Or limit? Whatever you said. Yes, I think this community absolutely has, because a big part of the Fringe Festival, our mission isn't just to make the arts accessible for artists, but to make audiences decisive and to tell them, you know what, there's 50 some shows, or even if there's less, even if there's 25, you get to pick which one is appealing to you. Your dollar and your time is so important to us. You get to map out you get to curate your own experience in this process. And by therefore, the people collectively, by the power of their dollar and their time and their presence, are telling us what art is and is not interesting to them. Long-winded way to answer that. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments about this? I have one more thing I wanted to pitch, but just in tech meets art in general. Has anyone been seeing any of these trends or facing any issues of similar mention themselves lately? The only thing I wanted to mention, besides if you need more copies of the guide, I have them. We actually are looking for, I did want to make one little pitch. We are looking for both, when I say paid, modestly, we're looking for modestly paid tech operators. Those of you that are interested in tech, in any respect, by tech I mean light, sound, digital projection at some of our venues. We're doing something a little differently this year, where in the past, if you were a tech manager, you ran tech for every show at one specific venue. We're trying to kind of spread the load out a little more. One, because our budget just can't sustain paying people a living wage for those 4 days, and it's a very intense 4 to 5 days when all those performances are happening. But also because we want you to experience the festival and go see shows and network yourself more. So the goal is to maybe say, hey, if you're willing to work tech for 1, maybe 2 productions, typically they have 2 to 3 performances, with the rest, we'll give you a pass, with the rest of the festival to go and experience and immerse. You do not need to be, if you've never ran tech for like light, sound, or digital projection, I promise you, and I'm not something, we have some incredibly talented ones that handle more. For a lot of our venues are very basic needs. If you know how to operate a computer, if you know how to push a few buttons and listen and push a button when you're told to push a button, you can do it. And I assure you. So if anyone's interested in that, summer paid opportunities, a certain amount of hours, all of them are minimally compensated by some meals and by passes. And again, you really only have to say, okay, I'll do 1 show, I'll do 2 shows. You can pick anywhere between 1, 2, 3, or 4 productions total that you're willing to operate for us. That would be super appreciated. And I thought this would be a perfect demographic. So whether you're interested in production, music, sound, lighting, anything like that, let me know. Does anyone else have any other comments, questions, or concerns at this time? I'll rattle through a lot. Okay. I'm done. Thank you guys.